So interesting. So I'm wondering whether this, like, if we have a C that is A specific, which is to say, the probability that I get it right if it's one kind of thing versus the probability I get it right if it's some other kind of thing, we could probably generalize that C to having a different C for each of the actions.
Yeah, we could. I don't want to, but we could. Actually, the more I think the more likely case in some sense is a weird one that seems counterintuitive, which is not for every action do I have a different C, but what's the probability that I would say something is right versus the probability I would say something is wrong? Those don't have to be the same probability. This C actually represents the probability that the label I give you is correct, but there are actually more possibilities. There's a difference between a false positive and a false negative.
Got it.
So we're treating it as if there's only two cases here, but there's actually four.
Okay, that's fair.
But no one wants to do it. So last thing I'll say about this before I move on to my last slide is notice that I've acted as if there's only two cases here. There's the case where any policy can be optimal, and then there's the case where only one can be optimal. But there's actually spaces in between here. So you could imagine a case where you might say, well, there can be more than one optimal policy, but it's more likely there's only one. It's slightly less likely that there are two. It's slightly less likely that there are three, and so on and so forth. And you could have a prior over any of the combinations of actions being optimal, and that prior need not be uniform. And in fact, even here, we're actually assuming a distribution over all the possible 2 to the n minus 1 policies in such a way that each action independently is equally likely. You could set things up so that, yeah, sure, it may be the case that there's more than one optimal policy, but A alone is much more likely than A and B, which is even more likely than A, B, and C, and so on and so forth.
Does that make things much hairier in terms of the formulas?
Much hairier. I mean, the reason we end up with something that's this simple over here, and this simple in the general case, and this simple in the only one case, is that we get to eliminate all the common priors.
I see.
And if we can't eliminate them, we got to carry them around with us.
Neat.
Okay, cool.
Okay, that's cool. Now, does this tell us what to do also if we have a prior that some action is correct? Because, let's say we've been learning for a while, like, yeah, that really seems like the right thing to do, and then the human is telling us something else. Can we factor in the information that we've gotten from our own experience?
That is exactly what I was going to bring up next. So why don't I do that?
Awesome.
Awesome.